For those of you that don't know me, need to know that my sole purpose on this earth and for my existence is to purchase a Honda CB360 and get it back on the road. This opportunity has now presented itself to me in the form of 2 Honda CB360s, and I plan on taking full advantage of this situation and getting one of these bikes back up and running. I'm wanting to take these plugs out. This should have been done before because I want to put a little transmission fluid down in the cylinders to loosen up the rings a little bit while we work on the carburetors. But why transmission fluid, Benny? It's because it has detergent in it, so it will clean and loosen up any rust in there, and it's just my choice. There's plenty of different things you can use to pour down in the cylinder to free it up. Time now to dig the carbs out of this box so we can rebuild them, but you guys need to know something before we get started. Today is the absolute 100% best day of my entire life. I kid you not, I have existed on this earth for over 40 years now, and I am so excited to be working on this Honda CB360. Without further ado, let's see what we have. Carb kits, they came with the motorbike. 2. And 2 partially disassembled carburetors. Jets and screws. Oh my. Let's take a peek at these air filters. You know, these air filters are like $100 a set. So I'm curious what kind of condition they're in. Whew. Pretty poor. Filter number 2. Pretty poor condition. I don't know if these are really usable. They might be. I might blow them off and use them. But also what you can do is get this element out of here, cut it out, and glue a new element on there instead of buying this whole apparatus for, like I said, over $50 a piece. Anytime I get a project like this, it starts out the same way. First thing I do is sift and sort through everything, get it laid out in front of me where I can see what the heck is going on. My research has exposed the ugly truth, and that is there are missing parts here in these carburetors. And that is why we have a parts bike. When stuff's this old, everybody has jacked and messed with it. Here's 2 different screws here, and these 2 are missing. Thankfully, the threads aren't stripped out. They just had a small size screw in there. Not the worst I've ever seen, but they're going to need some work. So this is interesting. This is spinning. See it? So it's really loose, but it won't come out. I think maybe the needle is froze up on this other side, so I have to work on this side first without damaging this diaphragm. Be careful when taking this pin out. I've seen so many times people break these ears off. That's not cool. I'm going to let this soak just a little while. It's spinning, but there must be corrosion above it, so I can't get it pulled out. I got lucky. It broke loose. Remember, our slide's not wanting to come out. That's why we're working under here. And I'm going to try and push this little pin down a bit to see if it'll come loose. I don't want to damage it, so I'm just going to give it just a little tiny tap. That's all it took. It just froze up a little bit, and there you go. Wonder if I can jar this loose. Easy fix, it was just gummed up a little bit. I still remain the only person in the world and on the internet who does not like ultrasonic cleaners. My opinion about ultrasonic cleaners will stay the same until long after my sweet death. Started to take the other carburetor apart. I'm not filming it, but I wanted to show you something. Look how clean this one is inside. Much cleaner than the other side, which is kind of odd to me. Carbs all cleaned up, looking like new money. I'm going to assemble them now, and I'm going to give you the quick version. This little dude is a number 35 something blah blah, I'm not sure. Goes right there, screw her in there. Little plug, and I put a washer on it. I'm not sure if it's supposed to have one or not, but I put an aluminum washer on it. Goes right there. If you'll notice, I didn't get it that clean for some reason. Won't hurt a thing. This would be a something or another tube that fits right in here, and I need to press it kind of in there. Number 68 jet, secondary jet. So I guess this is probably for the idle. Another tube for your primary jet goes right there. I just noticed something. You can't tighten that with a socket if you already have the screw on, so I'll just get a wrench. If you love sockets, you'll have to assemble it in a different order. So this is odd. A 5/16 wrench fits actually better than an 8mm. The 8mm is a little loose on there. This is a 100 jet, and there's some confusion. In the manual it says to use a 68. All the jets I did find and take out and inspect on these carburetors, all these carburetors, did have a 100 jet in them. So we're going to go with it. That's what I have, and this is a brand new one. Our little seat will fit in here, and it has no ring. We'll just ease it in. It did have some lube on the O-ring. This little doodad is curved downward. You know what would be better than doodad? A seat retainer. That sounds good. I wonder if that's the technical term for it. Needle is installed on our float. We'll shove this in there. This float is interesting because look at that tab. It can only open up that much because of this tab. I don't know that I've seen this before. If I have, I haven't noticed it. It doesn't seem like it's opening enough to me, so I'm going to bend this tab over a little bit. I don't know for sure what the scientific deal is behind this, guys. To check the float height, you check from here, the base, to the top of the float with a dial caliper. Right now, the setting is at 19 point something millimeter. I think Honda wants it to be 18 millimeter, but you're supposed to be holding the carburetor at a 45-degree angle or something like that when you check it. I'm going to just set them to 17 with it sitting flat on the bench. In order to make this adjustment, you just bend this tab right here up or down. It'll move the float up or down, and then make them even. You know, one could be higher than the other. I've been jacking with them here for a little while now. I got them at about 17.5 millimeter. That's good enough for me. I'm happy with that. Won't make much difference. If the float is set too high, then the carburetor will dump gas out of it because the needle won't be seating against the seat good enough to restrict the gas and stop it from flowing. If the float level is too low, the needle will seat too quickly and the bowl will only be halfway full of fuel, and you will have bogging out problems, issues like that, because you're running out of fuel in the bowl and it doesn't supply the carburetor enough fuel. Unless you're racing or going straight up a hill and straight down a hill and lean your bike way over one way or the other, that is the only time you'd really have to have a really precise setting on the float. For the 99% of us who just ride these things down the road, maybe in the field a little bit, just get the float setting close and call it good. I shoved some grease down here in this groove and then put the O-ring on it. And it looks to be holding, so I'm going to just pop it on here. The longer screws is what holds this on. The shorter ones go on the other side with a diaphragm. I almost forgot to tell you how to check the float. Where the fuel inlet is, you just go. So when it leans down, it's shut. You can't blow no air through it. When it's up, air's going through it. You dig? Look here. I'm going to get close where you can hear it. Flop your carburetor around. Time to put the diaphragm in. Check your diaphragm out. Make sure it doesn't have any holes or punctures or anything like that. If you changed your little needle out here that comes in the kit, good for you. I didn't. There's a tab on the case and there's a tab on your diaphragm, unless your diaphragm's aftermarket. In which case you need to look at these two holes on the bottom of the slide and line them up with the hole where the air filter goes straight towards it. Like so. So I noticed my needle was a little bit bent on the end and looked kind of crappy, so I decided to go ahead and replace it. Aren't I silly sometimes? Sometimes I'm silly. Forgive me for not cleaning the outside of this cover. Small screws on this side, no lock washers. So by the way, don't forget to put the spring in the slide. That was silly. And you got to line it up with this little thingamabob. In order to test the slide, we need to blow in this spot right here. And if you look in there, there's two little holes. And that's what I was telling you. The slide with the two holes needs to match these two holes. And you can see all them holes in there. Line all that stuff up. Now, here we go. Wait a minute. I got a jawbreaker. I love these things. Gobstopper. Alright, here we go. That's all you gotta do, blowing it. And that's working good. A little spring will go right here, closest to the bowl. And then you have this adjustment screw and it's got an O-ring on it. I greased the O-ring. We'll kind of spin it, slip it in there. Bottom it out, but don't turn it hard, just easy. I don't know what the setting's supposed to be. I'm going to go out 1.5. Maybe that's right, I'm not sure. The way you do that is you focus just on one edge of the screw, and just like a clock, go from 12 o'clock to 12 o'clock. So one full turn is like that. That's one turn, and then half a turn, and that's it. We're done with that. Little plug and washer goes right here. This is a port to hook a vacuum gauge to. If you're going to synchronize the carburetors with a vacuum gauge, which I'm almost positive I am going to find for myself that to be unnecessary. We now have a completely rebuilt carburetor. I'm going to rebuild the other carburetor, and then I'm going to show you how we marry the two together. This carburetor is a little different. It's got this bracket and this air adjustment screw. It's just held on with one screw on the bowl. Follow this back and you will see that there's a spring right there. For now, leave a gap right there. Don't let the adjuster push against this. Make sure this little jam nut and screw is free so that you can make an adjustment if you have to, and I'm sure we will. There are two little washers. There's one here against the spring and the other one is against the screw on this side. See that there? This is a linkage on the other carburetor. Think of this as the cream inside of an Oreo cookie. The two washers on the other carburetor are the brown cookie of the Oreo cookie. Now make a cookie. Before we do that, make sure the washer is on this choke shaft on the other carburetor, the one with the spring. See it back here? In an attempt to show you folks how this works, I'm going to loosen this way up. You don't have to do this at home if you can just open that spring up a little bit. So now see, it's very loose where these two washers are free. See that? Now I'm going to back it off so there's some spring tension on there to hold everything together for me. I did slip the choke linkage on. Lock washer. Nut. Crimping down one side of this lock washer so the nut does not back off. We will now flop these beauties over carefully. Now we will install our plate. Red Loctite is a little excessive, but that's all I have. Blue would be better. Snug them all down nice and evenly. You know, a little bit at a time. Make sure everything settles together nicely. Time to synchronize these carburetors. Make sure both of these butterfly flaps are completely closed. The way you do that is loosen this screw up all the way, and then the screw behind here with the jam nut on it and the spring, loosen that up till the flap's completely closed. This is a piece of welding wire. You want to put it on the very bottom center of the hole right there. You do not want to put it on the top of the flap like that, because you can pull it out because the carburetor is designed to open this direction. With it on the bottom, it's locked into place until you release it by adjusting this screw. Keeping tension on the wire while I turn this screw in. As soon as we get to a certain point, the wire will just release. And there, it slipped out. Same thing on the other side. Stick the wire in the center of the barrel in the same location as you did this other side. Now adjust this screw just the same way we did the other side until the wire releases. And there you have it. Now, we got to tighten up this jam nut. This is the jam nut down here that needs to be tightened. I just want to make sure that you knew to hold this screw in place while you tighten that nut. You don't want this screw to turn. That'll change your adjustment. Last adjustment is right here for WOT. If you turn it in or out, it will adjust the butterflies when it's wide open throttle. So to do that, you have to hold it wide open throttle, and you'll see it'll bottom out against that screw. See that? Turn her around. Bottom it out. Make sure your flaps are perfectly wide open. If they're not, going back here and make your WOT adjustment. See how it's moving them up and back as I do the screw. Make sure they're just perfectly straight and wide open. One other thing, make sure your choke flaps are even too, going straight across. You can bend this, tweak it a little bit to make it match the other side and be straight. That's it, 2 carburetors, all freshly rebuilt, synchronized, and ready to put back onto our CB360. Stay tuned if you're interested in seeing this bike run. Hopefully next time I work on this thing and next time I upload a video on it, it will be running. As always, thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time.